So, but we've got our round 6 coming up for us, and I'm excited to continue to dive in for more Riftbound. And we've got Snake, who we saw obviously on our leaderboard, piloting now Misfortune that we're aware of. And you mentioned already Alan's Q.
Yeah, Alan's Q, again, a Legends Runeterra world champion. One of the players I watched a lot back in the day of that game really having its competitive scene. Awesome to see him here playing Riftbound, playing Kai'Sa, a deck that competitive players really tend to like, gives you lots of choices. Not surprised to see him playing that here today. I am just thrilled enough to get to see him again.
Can I get your thoughts on the Misfortune deck? I think ganking is the most fun interaction in this entire game. I love movement is my favorite thing. Obviously, I play Showstoppers, I play Legends like Set, but the fact that your Legend can give any one of your units the ability to move from a battlefield to a battlefield, I think that is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's really powerful. One of the key tenets of the game is that, you can only commit to one place or another at a time, and Misfortune as a Legend says, that's not for me. I'm just going to play my own game the way I want.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're already kind of seeing, because based off of the cards that you see in a lot of Misfortune decks that have popular play, we are, of course, probably playing a Dazzling Aurora variant, which is the most popular deck for Misfortune, of course, and that's why we are leading with our Battlefield for Aspirant's Climb, which says we must be playing to 9. I'm excited to play with 9 points with you, Aaron, because we've only seen some 8-point games, and Reaver's Row here on the side for Kai'Sa.
Yeah, these are interesting set of battlefields. Aspirant's Climb, you're setting your stake in the ground. You're saying, I will win the long game. Let me win the long game. My units are the best. We can duke it out however you want past that. Reaver's Row from Alan, pretty great against some of the ways that the Misfortune deck kind of bullies and kills your units. Things like Misfortune having Accelerate or Dead Bloom Predators just don't play as well into that Reaver's Row.
Yeah, I mean, pretty standard early turns here for both of these decks, and both of these players, I think, acknowledging that. We had the 2-drop that came in for Alan, and then we now have the stack deck, then followed up by Immobilize, which maybe we found off of the stack deck, but it's the great starting point you want to start ramping with this deck.
Certainly didn't have the Mobilize in our hand to start. We played a Pack of Wonders on our first turn.
Oh, you're right.
A bit of a weird card that, not a lot of decks really play, but you will see it in these Dazzling Aurora decks to rebuy some of your gear and just draw more cards and get a little bit of an engine going during the early turns when, your deck full of giant monsters isn't up to snuff yet.
Yeah, very quickly as well, going immediately into that Kai'Sa Survivor from the Champion Zone, getting the Conquer, drawing a card, and it's on the Reaver's Row, so we can also keep it a little safe eventually when some units start coming down for Snake.
Yeah, this is Alan's understanding the matchup, right? We knows the game will be lost in the long run. A lot of Kai'Sa players don't accelerate the Kai'Sa on their second turn, but we're doing it here. I need to get the points as quick as possible because I'm really only going to get so big of a window to be able to close this game.
Another stack deck coming in here for, more decisions. A lot of these Dazzling decks we know are all about setup and then getting to the turns where you eventually start playing units or the Dazzling itself. Real quick, Aaron, these are 2 of the most beautiful decks I've ever seen. Just the amount of these runes and, the alternate one. It's beautiful. Of course, we've got our overnumbers from both of our players here. What a beautiful looking game state.
Love of the game.
Yeah.
You gotta appreciate a love of the game. The second Pack of Wonders, not very good compared to the first Pack of Wonders.
No, not at all. And of course, again, as we are setting ourselves for these Dazzlings, you are conceding the point game 100% until we get to that point. 6 runes for Alan. And I think a lot of this, too, is what's your mindset when you go against Dazzling? Obviously, I think the easiest thing to do is, you don't want to overcommit everything. But when you're specifically playing against the Misfortune version, it has that Chaos domain, which is different than what you see, I don't know, the Volibear decks or even Master Yi when they do it because they have access to different domains. And I think the hand disruption that comes with this specific duo of Body and Chaos, you don't necessarily want to play all of your resources because you need to hold them for the Dazzling plays or the units that come after. But if you hold on to your cards, your opponent might know.
Yeah, sometimes they get taken. Well, you're put into this weird squeeze sometimes against Aurora, and I think Alan felt that here, which is well, I've scored both battlefields already. Maybe I have a Darius or some Accelerate unit in my hand, but I can't score anymore. I guess I'm just going to play some units to the base, and that's the best I can do. It is one of the things with Riftbound is it's really, really hard to get more than 2 points at any given turn. And when your opponent's not playing ball and not fighting for these battlefields, it sometimes feels like your cards are just there.
And that's just what they are there in Alan's base. But they're safe. You know, they feel safe at least, especially when Dead Bloom Predator being the first card that's off the top from the first ability of the Dazzling, that can only be played at contested battlefields. There aren't any.
This game is going really poorly for Alan really quickly. We had the Dazzling Aurora from Snake as quick as possible. This is the game plan. The difference in this deck between the games where you play the Quick Aurora and you don't are night and day. Alan still needs to get 4 more points even after this Kaisa Conquer, and this battlefield's about to get really congested really quick from Snake.
And we might even finally see the ability from the Reaver's Row get used, right? Because now there are units on both sides of the table to allow things to come back safely. And if it's a Kaisa Survivor, that's exactly what you want.
Yeah, Alan here, pretty happy just to trade any unit for a point, whatever I can take. I need to be able to get into a situation where I can have a really big Thousand-Tailed Watcher turn, shrink all your stuff, and be able to take both those battlefields, or set up a situation where maybe a Time Warp is able to steal, depending on if Alan is playing many copies of that. Knows the pressure is on. Time is not on his side with Aurora in play.
Time not being wasted either, as our Darius being played from hand, and just going to send it back with the Darius, just again creating more units on our base to use for later. And Darius, of course, still has that trick of gaining the 2 might whenever you do play your second card for the turn, and that can of course be later. It doesn't have to just be played and used on the turn that you're going for it. But this Dead Bloom Predator, as we go back into Snake's turn, is going to easily take out this Pouty Poro for the first point for Snake. And now you have all these runes to mess with, where we have to start thinking, do units come from hand, or do we play more Dazzlings?
A second Dazzling Aurora is about the worst thing Alan can see. I'm sure Snake is elated. This is about as perfect as things can go. We played some Pack of Wonders that haven't really done anything, but that doesn't matter a ton when you're roaring out an 8-drop every single turn.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what comes off the top of these, because I think the units and a hidden card also coming here. Can only imagine a Fight or Flight, typically one of the only ones played in this deck. But then, oh my gosh, the 12-costed Volibear, the body domain champion unit for Volibear coming in, which means even though we might not get a unit played onto the Reaver's Row on the second one, it'd have to only be a Dead Bloom. There is. We are going to contest it, and so the Reaver's Row idea will come into play, but I mean, a lot has happened. We have a bunch of units with a bunch of might now hitting the table, and this Volibear, I really want to dive in while they go through cards and get some information done. This Volibear is one of the best cards in set 1, period, strictly on its cost alone.
You love big monsters, huh? That's the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the biggest one we have, which is why these Dazzling Aurora decks do play it. It is the biggest thing you can hit. When you get into some of these Dazzling Aurora mirrors and you need really large numbers, I mean, 10 might, lots of shield, draw some cards if your opponent tries to ignore it. And, I mean, Alan's at a spot. I don't think ignoring all this is a possibility. You're going to have to try and fight through, and it's not looking good for that.
In the world where Alan might, depending on what it's in, might be forced to ignore it because there's so much might already built up on that Experience Climb, but you're ahead by 4 points. Is giving away that amount of card advantage because of the ability on Volibear Imposing, when an opponent moves to a battlefield other than this one, draw 1, you can give away a lot of cards, but it might be the only way Alan can find a way to gain points still every turn.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where Alan just has to make the best of bad situation. We know that Snake is going to be able to draw more cards, but Snake already has the cards that they want. These Dazzling Auroras are in play. We're hiding Fight or Flights to make sure we don't get blown out. And Alan is at 6, but we're playing to 9. We need to go in and get to that magical 7 so that we can set up that really big Thousand-Tailed Watcher turn and make a move there later.
Falling Star, the premier card for the Kaisa deck and having a bunch of success, looks like it's gonna go for the double ping onto the Volibear, which is gonna deal 6 to it, which means we're looking for 4 more. That is Void Seeker range.
Void Seeker, another Falling Star. One of the things about Volibear in this matchup is it is a big unit that's pretty weak to the damage spells. Smokescream, another thing, -4. No deflect on that compared to these Dead Bloom Predators that are much more punishing to have to play these removal spells on.
Yeah, and as we saw Alan posture there, we've now played some more spells for the Raven Bloom to go up to 4 might, and it was also our second card for the turn, so the Darius has also gained 2 might, which is really going to help us contest these 2 Dead Blooms, depending on how much we want to invest.
Right, so you're Alan sitting here, you're like, okay, well, there's a Fight or Flight. My Darius, if I go in there, probably getting kicked out. What's the best case if that is what happens? Well, thinking about sending in a 4 might Raven Bloom and a 7 might Darius, if that goes into the Aspirant's Climb battlefield, and you get fight or flight it out, you definitely need a second trick, or you can send it into the Reaver's row. But then you know Snake's just going to back the Dead Blue Mount and be able to fight back and keep pushing and maybe pile on that other battlefield. A really tough situation between what can I do and what Alan has in his hand, whether it's smoke screens or void seekers or whatever kind of trick, really dictates how he's allowed to split up this damage.
That was perfect. That was a perfect assessment, and that's exactly what Alan's thinking about. And I don't envy his position because I think this decides the game, maybe.
Well, if he can't accomplish scoring the battlefields this turn, he definitely needs to score one of them. If he can't threaten that win, then there is not really going to be another window to do it. Snake, 2 points. Probably going to get to 4 points next turn. If not like the points really matter from Snake's side. You see this big difference in point total, but also the Aurora deck doesn't really win in that way. It is the biggest deck. It will clog both of these battlefields and use Misfortune to gank back and forth to make sure the opponent can never hold and they can never score both battlefields in the same turn, and they can never get that final point rule really accomplishing. So this situation, Alan is trying to run through, okay, can I take both of these? Can I set up where Snake has to kick me out of both somehow? We've already used 2 Dead Plume Predators. That makes it hard. If I can't do that, what is my plan to take both of them later and score one now? And then also, what units does Snake have left? We've seen Volibear. We've seen these Dead Bloom Predators. We haven't seen anything else. Are we going to see the 3rd Dead Bloom Predator? What's the other big monsters? Is there a chance Snake doesn't have any?
Maybe. I mean, I think of the big ones that are typically played in this deck, which are, Mind Splitter. We see Soul Gorgers sometimes seeing play in these, at least when looking at like the Chaos units. And like the Soul Gorgers, I think, sometimes spell disaster for Alan in a situation, because you did all this work to get the Volibear off of the board, to get these Dead Bloom Predators off the board. And Soul Gorger just says, hey, actually, instead of grabbing them off the top of my deck, I'll grab one from my trash. But a Hextech Ray coming in to deal 3 damage to this Dead Bloom, which is going to make this math at least a little easier for him. And then also a Falling Stars. 2 of these triggers going to go on, and we're going to pick where they go.
Yeah, no runes left, Alan. This is a big turn of just running into the deflect. He is definitely leaning into, all right, this is the turn that matters. What we are doing here is we're losing so many of our runes that it kind of takes out that Thousand Tail Watcher big play later, because we're just down to 1 rune. Even if we retreat once and go up to 2, 4, 6, it's just going to take way too long, and definitely Snake will have taken over the game at that point.
Yeah, and the correct read on that fight or flight, but because we did it all in spell damage, we're not going to a showdown, and regardless if you move that unit back to your base with the fight or flight at reaction speed, it's still going to take the damage from that Falling Star. We would have had to have preemptively read the play on the Hextech Ray to avoid that damage, but then you can see the battlefield.
If you're Snake here, maybe you think about doing that, but also, oh, is Alan going to lose all of his runes?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah, I'll sign up for that. That seems okay. Now the ability for Alan to make a comeback, if Snake has a pretty impressive turn this turn, play a big thing from hand, hit 2 more from the Auroras, it closes the door really rapidly.
Absolutely, it does. And we even have a floating, we had to pay all that deflect cost, right? We recycled all of those. But instead, the Reaver's Row ability is going to come through and just take our Dead Bloom back home.
Really interesting thing there. That Darius didn't beat that Dead Bloom in combat.
No.
That is I believe you have Cleave or have Stupefy, and I should run away, which is the type of thing, I don't know if Alan has it, but certainly needs Snake to believe that he does.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is this is exactly, I think, Alan's key to success for trying to figure out how to win this game, because with all of everything that entailed in this entire turn, we are going to go up to 8. We are 1 point away from winning the game. And so now I think saving that Dead Bloom was the play that Snake had to make, because we need to take advantage of the fact that Alan got rid of all of his runes, like you said. And that's easier to do when you're back on your turn, when you have access to your runes.
Alan has committed to this being the turn. Got to his 8 points, has these battlefields. A lot of pressure on Snake to find a way to get rid of the second one. Alan piling some units in. If he does have a trick, maybe the 7 might in the Reaver's Row, plus a trick is enough to keep the Dead Bloom off. If it is, then that really puts Snake in needing 2 more cards, 2 more tricks, because it looks like we're going to end up with 8 Might in this Aspirant's Climb. What types of tricks are available to this deck? Things like Confront, make your units inner ready, another big unit. There is the Captain Fortune in the Champion Zone, which does allow you to ready your unit. So you can go in with the Deadbloom Predator, use the Captain Fortune to ready it, give it ganking, and move it from battlefield to battlefield. So a lot of room to make some plays. You don't need that many numbers to get over the line here. Alan can't even bluff 2 spells with this Darius.
No, not at all. I mean, we only have 1 rune, and now, you know, we only have the 1 to play with. It's really Stupefy or nothing, right? We don't have a Fury rune. We can't even Hextech Ray if that was one of the options, of course.
You can Hextech Ray through Daughter of the Void, but it's been used already.
Oh, sure.
Normally, that's a thing you're able to do here. And I know when I play against the Kai'Sa deck, I sometimes forget we're just going to cleave for an honest +1 on our Raven Bloom.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it's going to do, because Assault not working when you're defending, of course. But it means that it is going to be enough, and that is enough to even... Oh, we're going to just play from our hand. It is the 3rd one. It's the 3rd Deadbloom Predator. We actually did end up having it in our hand to contest, trade with the other battlefield from that play, and now it is up to Alan to have to still recover. And that looks like he's going to give it away with a Mind... Or Soul Gorger bringing another unit back, and he said, that's it. That's enough to get over. I'm out of resources.
Yeah, I mean, I blew up all my runes.
Yeah.
I did everything I could. I set up a battlefield that I hope you can't break. Maybe you don't have the Deadbloom Predator. Maybe your Auroras hit other things. You know, sometimes you have to play your out, and that out's not real. But Alan, I thought, did play that game well. He took his lines. He knew what he needed to do. He got in the pressure and tried to get those points. But also, Snake did what he needed to do. He played those stack decks. He set up his hand. He found the ramp, and he ended up having 2 Dazzling Auroras, the card in the deck that matters the most. So both players did their game plans as much as possible, but ultimately one of them has to win.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that is currently the Misfortune up 1 game. And at least the Aspirant's Climb is out of the way, right? But that means we still have to deal with something like an Obelisk of Power, right? Because the same idea of what you said of that Aspirant's Climb gave us actually exactly the amount of time we needed to fully unlock our deck's capabilities. Obelisk of Power can do the same story, but we have to find all those same pieces like we did in game 1 for the Dazzling, right, deck. So we have game 2 that we still have to go into, of course, and I'm excited to check it out because I think Alan did play that game very well, and I think that means we can go to a game 3 as well. But here we go, going in on turn 1, and our battlefields are because Arena's Greatest is going to help speed that up, and then we have Sigil of the Storm being the battlefield of choice here for Snake.
Choosing Sigil of the Storm when you're on the draw, I'm used to a lot of the Misfortune players, when they're going second, you want to take that Obelisk of Power so you can have that 4 energy and have that really powerful start with like a Catalyst of Aeons. It seems like Snake's not going that route. Maybe saying, you know, I want to save that for when I'm on the play, and then I'll have 3 and I'll be able to maximize that being a head deal. Arena's Greatest from Alan, totally to be expected. Leaning into, I'm a more aggressive Kai'Sa deck. I want to be able to steal points in a game where I'm on the play.
Treasure Trove coming down. Different than the Pack of Wonders, of course, than what we saw. But this is the kind of combo that you were talking about and alluding to in game 1 that we didn't really see unlocked, right? But the idea here, I agree with you. I mean, I'm going to learn a lot, I think, in this game. And if we go to a game 3 and the Obelisk of Power does come up, because I guess it's just not the decision that I've seen a lot of players take, but Snake is playing better than I am in the tournament, of course, so I do trust his judgment on what's going on, and you're right, Sigil of the Storm will slow down a lot of what's going on for what Alan did in game 1.
This game is really funny to me. I like Pack of Wonders a lot. These Misfortune, Dazzling Aurora decks play a reasonable amount, but it is kind of a 2-card combo. You need it plus things like this Treasure Trove, or some people have played cards like Scrap Heap, and you can keep bouncing them and keep drawing cards. But when you get just 1/2 of them, it feels pretty mopey. The other side to that is Snake played 2 Pack of Wonders last game, and that did not stop him at all.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're back on to Alan's turn, we did have that Watchful Sentry that moved in. We played a Kai'Sa before, didn't accelerate it. We just wanted it on the board. We did just stupefy our own unit here, and then recycling for a power cost here. We are, because that makes sense. Of course, we paid the 1, we got the Stupefy for the draw, but we have to Sigil the Storm, recycle that unit, or that card. We're going to use a second Stupefy on our Watchful Sentry. And remember, it does say minimum 1, so you're not actually doing anything to your Watchful Sentry. And then, of course, a Pouty Poro coming down as well. With a second Pouty Poro, drew a ton of cards and played some more units.
Yeah, this is a really similar situation to game 1, where Alan is all right, I've scored both battlefields. What else is there for me to do? I guess I'll spin my wheels and play some Stupefies and put some Pouty Poros into play, because, I mean, I can't score faster. I just need to build up a battlefield for when you are finally starting to play a battlefield.
Yeah, and like we see again, the score discrepancy really happening here. And this is the most awkward turn, in my opinion, for the Dazzling deck, right? When you're at 6 and it just feels like there's not a lot to do. And that's exactly what we see happen. We just end up having to pass turn.
Well, there's an interesting decision that Sneak is doing. You can cycle that Treasure Trove.
Yeah.
You can choose to pay that power, and it'll give you a rune back, and you just draw a card. Really valuing the potential later to turn that into more cards. I think I see multiple Dazzling Auroras in Snake's hand, though, which is kind of a thing you could expect from not popping that Trove. I don't need to draw more cards. I have all the cards I need already.
Same path of success that we saw Alan do in Game 1. We conquered both those battlefields. We got the double hold triggers because we weren't contested at all. Bring them back home, played a Darius, and pass turn. We literally saw that exact same turn unfold in Game 1, but now we're in a situation, like you said, Dazzling's not on the table, and we can't play it.
I think we do have 9. We could play
you're right.
Dazzling.
And it looks like...
We have a broken sleeve.
Yeah.
Are we?
No, that's it. He goes, even if I play the Dazzling, there's not a single card off the top. I think that can save me in this situation. There's not a contested battlefield.
I can't Dead Bloom. Yep. Game's just over. Game's just over. That Arena's Greatest, giving that 1 extra point, is the opposite of the Aspirant's Climb game. Aspirant's Climb giving you that extra turn, Arena's Greatest, removing a turn.
Well, that was so fast that I want to talk about it, but at the same time, I think there's just a decision being made here, and I'm excited to see as we go into our Game 3, of course, but that was so clear-cut on showing the strengths of the Kaisa list when you don't do progressive interaction against it, right? And that is why I think people still have so much faith in the deck to go against these Dazzling Aurora decks, because when they don't find what they found, like we saw in Game 1 for Snake, the game runs away from you.
Yeah, I mean, Snake just didn't make a play on turn 2. Played the Treasure Trove, did nothing, and Kaisa scored points.
Yep.
You can't just do nothing unless you have access to something like that Aspirant's Climb, or some tool, something like a Fight or Flight to maybe save you that 1 point on their turn. And that is part of the reason why the Misfortune deck is not something that has crushed a tournament yet, or people are playing all of the time, despite being popular, because it does have that fail rate. It's one of the decks that is really strong when it does its thing, but sometimes you're just going to have games like that.
High variance gameplay. But we have a Game 3 to figure out who's going to end up being the winner of this match, because at the end of the day, because that game was so fast, I feel like we have so much time for this third one, right? That's one of the benefits.
Yeah, and I mean, part of being a high variance deck is you can lose the coin flip once a match. It's okay.
Yeah.
If you think you're flipping a weighted coin, well, that means you're in a pretty good position.
Real quick, that Obelisk of Power is going to be coming out here with Snake going first, which, again, I think I'm going to learn a lot here on why this decision was made going across the two things, but maybe that's a saving grace here for us, because Game 2 was almost a non-game for us, so this Obelisk is going to help us get around that, and with the Mobilize coming through, we are on course to get an early Dazzling out than we want to.
Yeah, turn 1 Mobilize, putting us up to 4 runes, going to be at 6 runes, can Catalyst of Aeons or another Mobilize into that Aurora really, really early. Alan, you know, doesn't have a board yet, but can play this Kaisa. That's not a very fast way of scoring this game. It's not 2 2-drops. Missing 2
2-drops on the 4. You nailed it. And here comes the Catalyst. It's already all of a sudden not looking great, because I don't know how we're going to do a double conquer for Alan next turn unless it's like Darius plus Cleave strictly to get a unit onto that battlefield. And I don't know what else you do. And of course, we picked Candlelit Sanctum as our battlefield for this game. We want to start taking advantage and looking at the top 2 cards of our deck to figure out what we need to win this match. And with the Catalyst coming through, Dazzling's coming down next turn if we have it. Yeah, Alan's got to be over there chanting his head, no Aurora, no Aurora, no Aurora. That's a bit of a tongue twister there. You know, it's one of those things where you also, if you go in with this Kaisa, are afraid of even a Dead Bloom Predator. It's not like the previous game where you were ahead and you're able to hide your units at your base. This game, you got to start storing, and you're going to make that Dead Bloom Predator really good against you. Drawing 2 cards here off the top, though. One from the Lettering Yordle, a second one from Conquering on the Kaisa, and of course we do also have the Candlelit Sanctum to synergize with it very well. Alan choosing to keep both cards on top, that is a good sign for his chances. It means he's got a game plan, and that's part of it. Yeah, here's finally an extra drop, although we do have the Ravenbloom student, as we need to get some more units on the board if we want to keep up in scoring points in the game. But here is the big turn if we find out real fast if Snake has the Dazzling, or at least even has like a Dead Bloom to contest this Kai'Sa right away.
There is a chance that even if we have a Dazzling Aurora on Snake's side, Alan could possibly have some type of gear removal, but this is going to make sure that's definitely not true. There is a Time Warp to take, a Cleave, a Stupefy, 2 Dariuses. That is not a hand that's going to be beating a Dazzling Aurora very easily.
No, not at all. And there comes the Dazzling immediately following up. Scouts out, not having something like a Thermo Beam, which we see a lot of Kai'Sa decks play in their sideboard. The fact that means that I'm going to get a proc off of this, and unless you start drawing that Thermo Beam right now, I'm going to get away with at least another activation of this ability. So here we go, off the top. This is a fun game. I love the Dazzling Aurora game. There it is, Dead Bloom Predator attempting that we can play to contest against this Kai'Sa. That, I think, was the perfect hit we were looking for right there.
Yeah, I mean, game 1, we saw this Aurora situation, but Alan was at like 3 or 4 points already.
Yeah.
This game, Alan's at 1 point, only has 4 Might of units in play, and we know Alan's hand. I think Snake is sitting there feeling pretty good about everything. Had a really great curve out with Mobilize into Catalyst, into Aurora, plus Sabotage, just in case you had a trick. And Alan's going to need to feel pretty...
Oh my goodness, Aaron, I didn't just see that happen. I was just about to say, you know what, I'm not going to sell Alan out of this game quite yet. We saw how masterfully he tried to solve the puzzle in game 1 on playing each of these spells, removing these units on the board. But when your opponent scouts your hand and doesn't see your answer to Dazzling Aurora, and then you draw it.
Well, I want to point out a really important thing.
Yeah.
Alan knew that was there. He Candlelit Sanctum 2 cards to the top, drew 1 with the Kai'Sa, knew to leave that second so it couldn't get Sabotage, and got to have it to beat this. He played around the Aurora plus Sabotage here. Really top-level stuff, thinking about all of the angles of what's going to go on.
I wish I was that good at this game. But that's why they're sitting there, and that's why I'm sitting here. And we did get a spell off, of course, to the Ravenbloom, but the Dazzling Aurora is off the board, and now there's a real question about, like, okay, if you're Alan, I answered one of them. There's still a world where another one comes out, right? But
yeah, I mean, if there's another, we have this Cleave. We knew about this from the Sabotage, chose not to take it. And now we're going to go pressure this Dead Bloom Predator. If there's not another Aurora, we know Alan has 2 Dariuses and a Thousand Tail Watcher. A bunch of massive units that would be able to beat through if we end up seeing Snake just play big units and not have that engine that Aurora really applies to the game.
Wow. That was great. That turn was fantastic. The sideboarding in these Thermo Beams and playing them and finding them and putting them where you need them exactly to avoid cards like Sabotage. What's some crazy, intense, high-level gameplay, like you said. And the fact that, you know, man, do you read a lot into player posture?
There's definitely some of it.
Okay.
I'm a big proponent of if you posture well, whether they think about it or not, they will play into your posture. And I think some of that is natural to them, too. And, you know, Snake's posture, I feel like that means he's got something pretty good.
Yeah, not out of this game yet at all, especially because, you know, even at the end of the day, if it takes a couple of turns even to find something like a Dazzling, as we are picking them all up, so 3-6.
Just the misfortune. I mean, that's going to get to be in there and beat up that Ravenbloom student, ready a rune, but not the power play we're really looking for. But Alan's Candlelit Sanctum, really good for Snake here. Knows exactly what he's digging for and gives him a strong opportunity.
Yeah, and again, because you were saying you did scout out that knowledge with the Sabotage, getting advantage of here, what I was trying to allude to was, even if you find the Dazzling next turn, because of this being very different than game 1 of all those points not going to Alan earlier on, you're not out of this game yet. We can find a Dazzling and play it 1 turn later after the Thermo Beam and still find a way back.
Yeah, this has been a bit of a roller coaster. Snake having the best possible start, Alan having the answers to the best possible start, and now it definitely is anyone's game. Snake keeping one of the cards, I got to imagine that's a Dazzling Aurora or a big monster or something he's really excited to just slam down next turn.
Yeah, getting out that Pack of Wonders, which, as we know from game 1, didn't really do a whole lot for us there. But yeah, having the Misfortune out, no units in play, but you know what's coming, as we know. It's just a question of what resource Alan wants to use right now.
I can see if I'm Snake and I have this Pack of Wonders, I keep something like that treasure trove on top so I can start getting the engine going. Alan's low on points. Alan's only going to get like 1 point a turn here. And maybe you have enough time to get a card draw engine really churning and find enough big stuff to win that way, even if you don't get an Aurora.
Yeah, we still have the option that if we don't draw the Dazzling, if we draw a Dead Bloom, we can play them. And if you're only recycling the 2 runes a turn, like we did with this Misfortune on the Accelerate cost, you're still on pace to play a Dazzling when you find it. But if you also churn through all those units, is there even the point to play the Dazzling anymore until you run out?
Well, it depends how many you're playing. It looks like we saw 3 Dead Blooms, a Soul Gorger, and the big Volley Bear. So those are all pretty nice. I do think one of the situations is because we have this big Volley in our deck, if we ever do end up drawing that one, it is really hard to play.
Yes, it
and
is.
That would be a pretty rough draw. We do know this is a good draw because we put it on top with that Candlelit Sanctum.
And it was a Dead Bloom, or we had it ready to go to contest against one of these Dariuses. And there it goes, keeping us still up in some points. And then once again, we'll get this Candlelit.
Yeah, Candlelit doing a lot of work for Snake. Did a ton of work for Alan earlier, letting him find that Thermo and hide it from the Sabotage. But Snake is the one who needs to find stuff now. Alan, we know, has another Darius and a Thousand Tail Watcher, which he might use either of those, especially in combination with the Hopeful, to take out this Dead Bloom Predator this turn. So Snake's kind of on the back foot of like, okay, I need another thing, and I am running low on good things.
I feel that way, at least when we look at these, as we put 1 on the bottom and leave 1 on top. So at least one of them's a good thing. Passing back for Alan. And I'm excited. I'm kind of actually shaking because I think we had such this great exchange of Snake in his deck was playing and firing at all cylinders, and then Alan played perfectly and found the answer that he needed when he needed it. And so it feels like we're almost in a neutral game state currently.
Definitely. I mean, this really has been a bit of a roller coaster, and this is the play I thought was going likely to happen. The Thousand Tail Watcher taking out this Dead Bloom Predator, getting that point, putting Alan up to 4 here, putting him in a position, going to probably go up to 5 from this Noxus Hopeful, and then really be threatening like, hey, Snake, you have 2 turns. What do you kept something on top. Is it an Aurora? Volley Bear is maybe not good enough to put in anymore. It has to go to your base, and that's a really tough place to be.
Yeah, it was fine when Alan was generating 1 point a turn, but this one is because of the accelerated unit and now also the backup unit, like you said. This one is posturing 2 runes, or 2 points a turn, and that very quickly gets you to that 7 point. But instead, we're going to see the Bullet Time, the signature spell for Misfortune, seeing some play, and we're going to recycle a full 7 to kill the Thousand Tail Watcher and keep our Dead Bloom alive.
I really wonder if Snake was knowing this was a play that was going to happen. Because if you're aware of that, then you want to keep something like a Mobilize on top. I'm curious if he wasn't sure and we're going to see a big monster and it's kind of he's decided he won't be able to play it. But that was a big decision just passing here, so it probably wasn't that cheap spell of any kind. And this is now a really tough situation for Snake.
Did successfully clear the board, though. So, again, at least when it comes down to that point race, we did slow down Alan, and although we lost all of our runes, literally all of our runes. You said, what's that thing you said? Runes are for losers?
Yeah, we have a fight or flight, so that's something.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. We're not letting Alan get to that 4-point threshold, which is the important one. That means we gained a turn by having that fight or flight. Really valuable, because we need that time to regain these runes so we can make another big play, potentially a big unit plus a bullet time in the same turn again.
Yeah, I mean, 2 consecutive turns of passing. I mean, half, right, because of the fight or flight, like you said. But now we are posturing even more. Second fight or flight coming through, going to bring this Darius back. But if we find a way to play 2 cards, the Darius will ready itself.
Alan also already has 2 units. Having a Gust here from Snake makes sense. Otherwise, the fight or flight wouldn't have really done anything. Still would have let Alan score twice. So this makes that make more sense. But yeah, if Alan just has 2 units, we're still scoring twice.
Yeah, the Darius will just be able to ready itself because the first thing we did was just swing with the Darius, and now a Thousand Tail Watcher coming down, and yeah, not even going to pay the Accelerate cost just as a second card for the turn. Here comes Darius once again into the Candlelit. No answer for that one, of course. Going to get a Candlelit trigger and up to 4 points and potentially 5 with the Noxus Hopeful, like you said. What do we do now?
This is one of those games where you're Snake and you had everything go right in your plan.
Yeah.
You had the ramp spells, you had the Aurora, you had the Sabotage, and now you look at this board and you're like, oh my god, I'm trying to top deck. The Dead Bloom Predators, I can't even play right now. Alan's going to get to score and run away. It really feels like the answers are maybe something like a Bullet Time plus a Soul Gorger, bringing back a second thing.
Yeah.
But getting those into the battlefield here, maybe Soul Gorger bring back Misfortune lets you accelerate and move both and really contest a location.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see the kind of opposite situation. Instead of moving your stuff back for something like a Dead Bloom to be played, we're just going to split our resources because we're at 7 points. And there's the fist bump, the game, the match, going to Alan's EQ, coming all the way back from a Game 1 loss, taking the match in the end on Kaisa.
Yeah, I mean, that was an awesome Game 3. So we kind of got the whole spread of the Misfortune experience. Game 1, play a Dazzling Aurora, play a second Dazzling Aurora, take over the game board right before Alan's about to steal the game, right? Just take it all over, win the game.
Yeah.
Game 2, kind of don't do a lot and just get run over. That happens sometimes. Game 3, do your perfect thing, but Alan did have the hate card. The Thermo Beam, hidden from the Candlelit Sanctum, dodging that Sabotage, really heads-up play, was able to capitalize on having those big units in his hand to fight through multiple Dead Blooms, even past the Aurora. Really great stuff. That's how you become a world champion in some card games.
And it's also why you pick Kaisa, right? I mean, we saw Game 2 be completely nullified because of it go slightly wrong, and that's the explosivity of the Kaisa deck on playing well all the way through. And again, remember, with the Obelisk of Power in play, Alan skipped the potentially play 2 drops play, and that didn't happen. It just ended up being Kaisa Survivor. We thought it was going to go bad very quickly with the ramp spell follow through, like you said, but perfect answers at perfect times go a long way.
You know, the Misfortune deck does a really clear plan, and sometimes what the Kaisa deck gets to do, why Kaisa's so strong, is it is adaptable. Some games you get to be the aggressor. Some games you're stealing points. Some days you're the control deck. You're answering with removal spells, using Darius and Thousand Tail Watcher to get rid of their units. And in a matchup like that one, your ability to play both those roles, Alan one game being really aggressive, the next game being the control, answering the Auroras, beating those monsters in combat, fighting through 2 Dead Bloom Predators like they were nothing. You know, that's why people love Kaisa, and it's really powerful, and people want to be doing more and more of that.
Absolutely. And I don't actually know how we're going to top that match because I had so much fun watching it and watching both of these players play incredibly well.